there is no such thing as permanency. Yet, we have convinced ourselves that that is possible. In love, in relationships, in a state of being, or whether it's a well-being or not so well, as in pain. We like it, or we identify with it, at least, and we think this is the state. This is where I will be from now until, well, indefinitely. Yet, nowhere you look can you find any evidence, which is quite startling. It's surprising, but for many people, but I think it's surprising that despite all of the facts that indicate that there is nothing that stays stable, we nevertheless push for it. It's like, yeah, but there's that one shot, maybe 1 in a billion, 1 in a trillion, I could get this to stick, I could get this to stay, I could get this not to change. My health, my hair color, my body, my memory, my vision, eyesight, that is. I can save this, I can save myself, I can save, okay? Which part of our lives has stayed the same? If we're really, really being honest, the answer is simple. None. None. Usually when a person becomes an adult, I notice in most cases, when you ask them about their past, especially about childhood, in most cases they will say, the good old days. Or even if it's not their childhood you're asking about, but in the past, how was it? The good old days. People used to be like this, culture used to be like this, music used to be like this, people, etc., society used to be like this, the world, the environment used to be like this. And now what happened? So much has changed. Okay, let's pause a minute and go back to that time period that you were thinking about when you said, the good old days. If we pluck out from the world somebody who was at the same age as you are now, when I'm asking you the same question, and we posit the same question to them, ask them, guess what they're going to say? The good old days. And that's going to take us back maybe 50, 60, 100 years from that point that you consider to be the good old days. You see how ludicrous it is? This is another version, another form of tanha, we call it in Buddhism. Craving. I like to add, craving with its constant thirst, voracious appetite for more. That's why I don't feel craving, the English word craving really gets it, does it, in defining properly the Pali term of the human condition, or the drive to want more, that is tanha. And then we look forward and we're trying to change that. You go and ask any scientist, you go and ask any strategist or somebody working with technology. Somebody who, even in the humanities, such as in in philosophy or something like that. When you ask them, there's this aspiration for hitting the right spot and things will be okay in the future. Or at least this thing that I'm doing is at the apex. Nobody has ever come close to getting where I am in this. For example, quantum mechanics. People have been talking about it for about 100 years or so. As if it's the thing. Technology, rockets, this, that. They're doing quantum computations. Okay, big words, amazing technology behind it, yes. But we think this is the first time it's ever done that. We've ever come this far. Well, how do we know? Who can guarantee that? Why am I saying this? Because there's this drive for permanency. In every effort we apply, in wanting our ideas to be reflected in the world, there is, either on the gross level or on a subtle level, but nevertheless there is the presence of the quest for permanency. And this is one of the biggest challenges. The Buddha called it vipallasa, distortions of the mind. We're creating something that isn't there. It's delusional, in fact. Impermanence, instability, things not being the same, changeability, is the law, is real. Permanency is not. It never has been. There is no such thing as permanent. In fact, it's like it doesn't exist. I'm reminded of my younger brother when he was born. I was 10 when he was born, and for me it was like a gift. I would look at him. I would just touch his feet. They were so small. I was so careful. So, especially the first few weeks, and I was looking at his eyes. Even his body smelled different. As a baby, as an infant. But especially the eyes. I looked at the eye color changing. I noticed how it changed from almost transparent to like greenish, and then dark blue, and then light blue, and then hazel, and then honey colored, and then it kind of was in that range. But I was like, when is the color going to stop changing? I like the green, I like the blue, can it stop, or is it going to be tomorrow something else? So I'm reminded of that as I talk about the fact of impermanency. Everything is changing. Something from my childhood. I remember when the seasons would come and go, 4 seasons, right? At the end of winter or at the end of summer, my mom had the tendency of, my grandmother, etc., to pack up the clothing that we were wearing, being light clothing for the weather, this and that. So it was Mediterranean, so it would be humid, this and that. So it would get cold and windy in the autumn and especially winter. So for that, the other suitcase would open up. And now you would have the winter clothing come out, right? This is not a unique situation with me and my family or whatever. So I'm sure it's, many people resonate with this. But the thing that was very interesting to me was when I was trying out or trying to wear my old clothing. I would get so excited, by the way, because I had not seen them for a whole season or two. Now I get to see them. It's like, the smell and all that. It's weird. But I would put it on, and all of a sudden I would notice the size had gotten smaller. It had shrunk, and I would get disappointed. And I would complain to my mom, what has happened here? Nobody wore this, right? Nobody else has been wearing this. She's like, no. But why did it shrink? It kept shrinking. And I was afraid because these were my favorite clothing, let's say. And every time that the season would end, she would have to put it back into the suitcase, and then I would kind of dread it because I was already anticipating by the next season when I try it on, put it on, oops, it's gotten even smaller. Okay, and we couldn't afford, we didn't have much money. We were rather poor, So I was always getting this, hand-me-downs from my older brother. But the problem was that I was the tallest in the family, and that meant that when the clothing shrank, the sleeve would go up and up and up and up, the forearm. And I'm not even talking about the pants. So it would show up, and it would be very uncomfortable. That's another story. But what I was looking at was, what is happening to the clothing? Nothing, in a sense, when I look at it. The main problem was the fact of change. Obviously, the clothing were also changing, but as far as the sizes are concerned, the sizes weren't changing. If you looked at the sticker, it would still say the size that it was last year. The body that I inhabit, I use, that is constantly changing, is the culprit, if there is one. But I was looking for permanency. Same thing with shoes, same thing with relationships, right? You see people. When you were in school, you see your friends. You go up the classes and the grade levels, and then you reach a point where you have to graduate, and each of you will have to go your separate ways. If you had a very, good relationship, it can be heart-wrenching. It is heart-wrenching. But then it opens up new vistas. So change is happening all the time. The food we eat, it doesn't stay. From the moment you put it in your mouth, you don't even have to chew it. You just close your lips, close your mouth with the food still there, with the spoon in there, and then you open your mouth and pull out the spoon with the food in it, and is it equally appetizing as it was on the way in? It changed. It changed for you. It's no longer attractive, is it? And when you bite on it, you chew on it, now forget it. And the whole process. So it's ironic that we are in the middle of the ocean and we are swimming in it and we are fish and we're saying, dry land, legs, breathing from my lungs, my nostrils, It's delusional. It doesn't exist, at least in the case of the fish. There are land animals and there are water, aquatic animals. So in our case, there's nothing. There's just impermanence. And similarly, the other vipallasas, there's other ones, right? Such as looking at something that causes you suffering and anticipating that it doesn't give you suffering. Like somebody who goes and grabs hold of, with bare hands, a dry, big cactus tree, or a small cactus tree, or a prickly pear. You're going to have to pay for that, with so many needles going into your skin. Very uncomfortable. Because everything is so nice. You hoped that it was. Similarly with something that is unpleasant, but you're wanting it to be pleasant and looking beautiful. The Buddha says, looking at something that is ugly and expecting it to be not ugly, you want it to be beautiful. That's another vipallasa. That's delusion. And that's what led him to say, beings are crazy. Beings are crazy, not just human beings, mind you. Because we are run by the stories in our head. And similarly with the goals we come up in this world, the ideas and sciences and things, like as I was mentioning about technologies, there's a lot of conceit there when we think that we are at the apex of knowledge, of wisdom, of science, of things. How do you know that, people are talking about AI and robotics and, the future is all artificial intelligence, and in fact it has to be what they were pushing for. They still are the transhumanism movement, which basically they want to cancel out humanity. They've been pursuing this for decades. Only recently they've been talking about it openly, but when you look at all of these movies, and I remember in the 70s, there was a series that they came up in America, United States, $6 Million Man. Anybody born in the 70s knows this. This weekly TV series. I loved it, I was a kid. Basically a person who falls and is almost dead, but they put it on life support, and then they have this new technology. They basically make him into half human, half robot, but it's all covered up, so you can't see. You can't detect that most of his body is actually robotic. And so you have movies like this. You have constantly, and that's one of the best ways that they can infiltrate the mind and make us think a certain way, and we take it for granted that this is our thinking. No, we are highly influenced by these things, which simply perpetuate a state of delusion. That's why I address these issues when they come up, and I feel it helps to connect them with what the Dhamma is supposed to be for us. But you cannot look at the teachings of the Buddha in a vacuum, completely removed from your own life and what you have to face. When there are dilemmas you are facing, when there are questions you are forced to at least respond to, and you look for the Dhamma to provide you with an answer. If it's a traditional way of looking at the situation with the interpretation that people have, that is completely removed by the current affairs, the current situation in the world, the current state of affairs, as I said, then there's going to be a problem. There will be resentment. And people will think that it's antiquated, but it's not. The Dhamma is so real, it's so alive. You can apply it in every facet of your life. These are not principles you need to simply study, to know about, to show off that, yeah, I know this, I know that principle, I know what a vipallasa is. Yeah, but are you applying any of it in your approach to life? Can you detect your deep, deep drive, tendencies to want to perpetuate a state of permanency, a state of constancy? It could be a feeling, it could be, as I said, relationship. How is your relationship with sickness? This is a good one, because everybody, sooner or later, is going to get sick. The body is going to, if you live long enough, you're going to get sick. The body is going to decay. It is decaying as you're listening to this. So What is your relationship to unhealth? Because everybody's going after health. Same thing with, oh, I want to save the climate, I want to save the earth, I want to save the environment, I want to save these people, I want to save this. When you look deep enough, it's loaded with conceit. People might not like this because of what they've been taught, unfortunately. But the fact remains, we have to question things with proper understanding, with proper right view. This is Dhamma. Not your own interpretation of the Dhamma. This is key. So with right understanding, when you approach things, all of a sudden you're going to see every aspect of it, no matter how so-called contemporary your issues might be, the Dhamma fits in beautifully. It addresses every single nook and cranny of those issues. Every single one. Despite the fact that it's 2,600 years separate from us, time-wise or culturally, it means nothing. All those factors mean nothing. Because the Buddha talked the truth. He discussed it. He explained it. He elaborated it for us to understand. And that's why he came up with all these structures and principles for us to be able to make our move and enter into the Dhamma, into the path, by one or more of these avenues of understanding. But you cannot gain understanding if you keep telling yourself things that are opposite to what really is taking place. So if you're someone who says to yourself, yeah, one day it's going to get better, and then what? It's going to stay better and it's going to go on from there? No, the clothing is going to keep shrinking, because if you're going to grow, if you're changing, other things are going to change around you. They are changing. You're just not willing to see. That's why death is the ultimate wake-up call, interestingly enough, for both the person who is dying and those people around the dying person. Because that's the ultimate change, because indicator or proof of, the evidence of impermanence. How so? Because you might have been able to convince yourself that, yeah, after this cancer is gone, I heal myself, everything's going to be better. Really? Until when? Yeah, may you have a long life. Okay. Until when? Until you die. You die. We die. We all will die. Okay. That has to serve a purpose. That it's not a matter of like winning an argument. The Buddha was never about debating. We are taught as bhikkhus in this Sutta Nipata, one after the other, one discourse after the other, how important it is to just never engage with crazy people who come wanting to debate, argue. Truth has nothing to do with arguments. Truth is truth. The Dhamma is the Dhamma. Do you see it? Wonderful. If you don't see it, you're not seeing the Dhamma, you're going to suffer. Who cares who wins the argument? It's not a matter of battle of rhetoric. So when we are able to acknowledge the fact that there is a dying going on now, because that's what change is. Change is moment to moment, a movie-like process of dyings, processes of death happening one after the other. They're linked together. They're movies like that. That's ever thought of why they call them movies? because each frame is moving. In the earlier days, there was the thing that with the drawing, a circular thing with the lamp, and you had only one slit in it, and people would look through that, the screen, that light is hitting this silhouette, and the silhouette itself was in a circle, so it kept on moving. I forgot the name of it. But basically, it moves. But when you slow it down, you're going to see the strobing. Each one is a different scene, but they're moving. Movies. 24 frames a second. That's what usually a movie is, animation, etc. Because your eyes can't capture anything that moves that fast and sees it as a flow, as a stream. Meanwhile, it is not. And that's why we are practicing sati, mindfulness, proper mindfulness, to slow it down to such a point where you're able to see the small compartments of experience. That is where you can actually have a grounding in reality. When I say grounding, divorced from the delusional thinking, like I was saying, of vipallasas, such as looking for something permanent in something that is already impermanent. The Buddha talks about this again and again, asking the question to the students, the bhikkhus. He says, bhikkhus, how can something that is impermanent produce something that is permanent? Is it possible? And they say, no, Bhante, it's not possible. Why? And the questions go on and on and on. You have so many settings like this. How can something that is impermanent produce something that is pleasant? Ultimately, there's pain involved. That's why impermanence produces dukkha. Anicca produces dukkha. Anybody who understands anicca understands dukkha. Anybody who understands dukkha, which is suffering, is getting closer to nibbana, awakening. And that is our opportunity. That is our shot in this life. Not to beat death somehow by attaining immortality, which is another delusion. Wrong view, completely. To gain immortality. Stupid immortality. You don't mind staying an imbecile, but you want to stay immortal. Many of the rich billionaires, that's their dream. To attain immortality, not just now, throughout history. People have been killing other people, destroying cultures to attain some type of an amrita or some type of a divine elixir, like a drink of the gods to gain immortality. Who cares about that if the person is an idiot? A fool who lives forever. Imagine that nightmare. Versus gaining wisdom. The Dhamma provides you that. Everyone has access to it. Everyone. That's why the Buddha generously gave the Dhamma to everyone of us. But you need a laboratory for that, to test the Dhamma. You have to test it on the territory, on the ground, in the laboratory that is your life. Meaning your life experiences. That doesn't happen by reading books, by reading the Dhamma, by reading or listening to Dhamma discourses or something like that. That's not the soul. That is a supplemental resource, of course. That's wonderful. That's a big factor in this. But the main work has to be you incorporating it into your life, into the very fabric of your life. The issues you're dealing with, the connections or the attachments you have with certain phenomena that are displeasing you, that are hurting you. And this is where you can bring in the principles such as vipallasa, distortions that we maintain in mind, in our minds, affecting our lives, bringing more and more suffering. And to look for that in these interactions you're having with people, with the significance of this or that situation or this or that person in your life. And to see if there is a longing in you to want to sustain that relationship. Or if you are in pain and you want to get out of it, or you're fighting and fighting, see if there's any sense of solidification or crystallizing or taking things to be absolutely concrete, meaning permanent. This pain will never leave me, type of an attitude. Well, that is, again, pain. That is, again, delusional thinking, because everything is changing, including the pain. It will not stay pain 100% throughout, because there was a moment where there was no pain, now there is. The moment will come where there won't be any. Just like it is with the opposite of pain, pleasure. This is why we are not encouraged to seek. In fact, we are shown the path to walk out of that thinking. Pleasure seeking from the six sense doors, the eyes, ears, etc. Because the Buddha showed again and again and again and again, seeking pleasure is the surest way to get stuck in samsara, in the hamster wheel of repeating the cycle of rebirth, of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. And that's why we're here. You look at everywhere, every living being that you see, every single one, even if you don't personally know them, you've heard about them at least. They lived, or they are living. Guess what? They are stuck. They are stuck in samsara. Repeated cycle of birth and death. Irrespective of position, status, wealth, education, whatever. So there's nothing for us to hold on to, whether it's your race, your language, your culture, your citizenship, your gender, your age, your weight level, meaning, oh, I'm always going to be fat. Well, always? Really? Really? So that really is courageous when we use it properly, in the right moment, to ask ourselves and to pull the rug from underneath these delusional thinking of looking for permanent, some type of a status, where it's fixed and it's unchanging in something that is already changing. Already it's a big weight off your shoulders. When you don't struggle anymore, because it's already going, it's already moving. It's like somebody who's trying to stop with their hand Niagara Falls. Pointing the finger, saying, I'm going to stop Niagara Falls. Or stop the Amazon river from flowing by holding a bucket and removing the water, or emptying out the Red Sea with my, bottle or ladle. We might shake our head saying, oh, that would be ridiculous. Of course not, it won't work. But we do it. In the tiny little interactions you have with life on a day-to-day basis, ask yourself, what is my expectation out of this? And what is the push? Where is the tension coming from? There is tension whenever there's craving. And when you're asking that question, wait a second. Allow yourself to sink into it a little bit more, to see what is your attitude about this situation. Is there some longing somewhere to want something out of this? And if you stay, if it's real tension, you're going to see there is. So your job is to quietly monitor, observe without judgment, and just observe, and then you're going to see, oh, I want things to remain the same. In this case, I want them changed over there, because I don't like that. Meanwhile, life is happening irrespective of what we like or don't like. That's called change, by the way, including our health and everything else. Because at the end, there is the exit. So what have we done as far as understanding this whole process? That is the university. That is the Dhamma. And it doesn't go on indefinitely. There are graduation dates in the university of the Dhamma. There's 4 graduations. You know that? The Dhamma, it's the path, it's not going on, ongoing forever and ever and ever. It's not something like mystical or something. Yeah, it's an open-ended thing. No, it's very definitive. It has its own marks. You can tell when the person graduates from this first level. That's called a Sotapanna, a stream winner. They will never fall back into the old ways of thinking, because now they have right view. Their life has changed tremendously. And they only come back at the most 7 more times into either the human or heavenly realms, never again to the lower realms. And the second graduation is the Sakadagami, the once returner. He or she comes back only once. And you can imagine the refinement that's taking place. They can never go and study somewhere else, as far outside of that university, because they've tasted the sweet honey of the Dhamma. And only it's found, these graduations are only possible within the Dhamma. No other university has that. No other religion has that. No other philosophy has this. And then you have the third graduation, that is the Anagami, that is the non-returner, the person who will never come back. But they are not fully graduated. They are not Arahants. Just a little bit left. And then finally, the ultimate graduation, and that is the Arahant, where the person is fully released from ignorance. There's nothing left. They've penetrated with wisdom fully and thoroughly. And they've liberated themselves. And they've fully lived the holy life. There's nothing else to be done. No other becoming anywhere in any universe, in any form, ever again. They've done what had to be done, and the Buddha's dispensation is now complete for such a person. That's what we work towards. It's not a battle with the ongoings of whatever's happening in society, in culture, in world events today, the issues, the soup du jour type of a thing of today. No. We are thinking we're going beyond that. One is encouraged to look beyond with a wider scope, vision. So that is also my encouragement, for you to graduate all the way to the ultimate graduation, as countless others before you have. So may this be helpful. Sukhi Hota.